Welcome everybody. Welcome to the Sunday International Big Book Workshop. Hi, I'm Dan B. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Sobriety date 1st of Feb 2021. This workshop is facilitated by Kemble. This study relies on you listening, but please, we pray that you have your big book in hand and follow along. With a pen, pencil, highlighter, make any notes you need and pause if you have to. Write down any questions and we will take them at the end of the meeting. We will keep everyone muted during the workshop except for the facilitators. Any inappropriate behavior will not be tolerated and you will be removed by one of the co-hosts. This meeting is being recorded. The audio portion only is being recorded and only of the facilitators. The recording will be shut down at the end of the class before taking any questions in order to preserve your anonymity. Have a great meeting. Here we open the meeting with a step 3 prayer found on page 63. I'm just going to let these in while I do that first. Okay. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Amen. Thank you, Kemble. Over to you, brother.
Okay, thank you, Brother Dan. Good afternoon, people. Happy Sunday. I'm a recovered alcoholic named Kemble. Welcome to the Sunday Big Book International meeting. Today is actually my first day as taking over this meeting, though I did this meeting before several times in the past. And of course, Joe put it on the YouTube channel. But he gave me this opportunity and I really appreciate it. It's God doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. So welcome anybody new, anybody struggling, anybody coming back. Welcome everybody that's here. It's great to see everybody. And we want to have a great meeting today. I want to share some things that God has put on my heart to share with others, and that's the purpose of us alcoholics. When we recover from this seemingly hopeless state of mind, we have been given the power to help others. And that's the key to helping others is the foundation stone of our recovery. It's a beautiful thing. And we can help others without looking for anything from them. See, my drinking career, if I'm going to help you, but I want something from you. So that's just the way it was. So my sobriety date, February 3rd, 2020. I took a drink way early in life, right? Within the first 2 years, I became a real heavy drinker. Actually, I was out drinking all them old folks by the time I turned 16. But I never knew I'd be suffering from this, but I came to find out years later as an illness. I suffer from this allergy and malady from at a very young age. And it took me 42 years to get through this thing in order to get the solution, right? Because I always thought I had all the power on my own. I could do it myself. I done tried everything in the world, 12-stepping myself. I thought I was God. I could fix myself. I thought I could cure myself, but we know there's no cure for alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So, Brother Dan, I want you to read a little something for me here. And it's found on page 180 of our big book. And it's at the end of Dr. Bob's story, the very last paragraph, and we'll read to the end of page 181. And then I would share on about this topic. I think it's a great topic for us today. It's going to explain a lot of things. So Dan, take it away, my brother.
Excellent, no worries. Hi everybody, page 180. I spend a great deal of time passing on what I learned to others who want and need it badly. I do it for 4 reasons. 1, a sense of duty. 2, it is a pleasure. 3, because in so doing, I'm paying my debt to the man who took time to pass it on to me. 4, because every time I do it, I take out a little more insurance for myself against a possible slip. Unlike most of our crowd, I did not get over my craving for liquor much during the first 2 and 1/2 years of abstinence. It was almost always with me, but at no time have I been anywhere near yielding. I used to get terribly upset when I saw my friends drink and knew I could not, but I scolded myself to believe that though I once had the same privilege, I had abused it so frightfully that it was withdrawn. So it doesn't behove me to squawk about it, for after all, nobody ever had to throw me down and pour liquor down my throat. If you think you are an atheist, an agnostic, a skeptic, or have any other form of intellectual pride which keeps you from accepting what is in this book, I feel sorry for you. If you still think you are strong enough to beat the game alone, that is your affair. But if you really and truly want to quit drinking liquor for good and all, and sincerely feel that you must have some help, we know that we have an answer for you. It never fails if you go about it with 1/2 the zeal you have been in the habit of showing when you were getting another drink. Your Heavenly Father will never let you down.
Okay, thank you, Brother Dan, for reading. Yeah, Dr. Bob, what an amazing character, the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. Be a 12-step Bob, and Bob never drank again. Beautiful thing. When Bob found sobriety, the 4 things on top of page 81, it struck a chord with me when I went through this process. So he says it's a sense of duty. It's paying back what we had got from the person that took us through this 12-step process. And we came to believe in a power greater than ourselves, and it commenced to solve our alcoholic problem. 2, it's a pleasure. I love doing this work. It's such a pleasure. It's greater pleasure than I had during my drinking career. At first, my drinking career was fun until it turned out to be a problem. Then it turned out to where I couldn't control it, and I couldn't enjoy it either. When I tried to control it, I couldn't enjoy it. When I thought I had control, I always lost control. So I get the ease of sense and comfort about carrying this message to other alcoholics. And then it says, because number 3, because in so doing, I'm paying my debt to the man who took time to pass it to me. Well, this man took time to pass this thing on to me. I was looking for somebody to take me through this thing at the beginning of 2020, because I knew I was going to relapse again if I didn't actually take the 12 steps with a sponsor, because I tried the 12 step myself. I used to read them signs on the darn wall. I said, well, I done took this step. I done took that step. I wanted to drink again. Go pick up a white chip. Boom. The next day, I'm at the meeting again, picking up another 24-hour chip. I picked up a whole bunch of them things in my illustrious 42-year drinking career. I got ordered to AA back in 1983, right? I thought I had the answers, but I ain't know nothing about this darn book. They gave me one, right? They got a bunch of dust on it. I didn't have time to read no book because that was going to take away from my drinking time. But anyway, I'm grateful for this program. First, I'm grateful to God. I'm certainly thankful for this program and the people who took time to take me through this book, answer my questions that I had, share their experience, strength, and hope with me, and it was instilled into my life. And then the number 4 point he brings out, because every time I do it, I take out a little more insurance for myself against a possible slip. That reminds me of our brother Bill Wilson back at the Mayflower Hotel, 6 months sober, right? He pacing back and forth, looking at the bar with the gay crowd on the inside. And you know, he had a thought, well, maybe I need to get a drink. He was feeling lonely and everything. But then he turned around looking at the phone booth. So the insane idea was about to kick back in. So he decided to go to that phone booth and make a phone call. He got a lot of calls where people didn't answer, or they gave him a crazy response. But he kept on. He was persistent until he got in touch with somebody, and they hooked him up. And eventually he met Dr. Bob and just kicked this thing off. So Bill went in there with that darn drink instead of getting on their phone. We wouldn't have the AA as it is today. So very thankful for him. So, and it keeps us as well from having a possible slip. as I mentioned earlier, helping others is the foundation stone of our recovery. I'm going to talk about a few of the stones as we go through the meeting. You know, it helps me as well. Though the problem has been removed, that's true. But the big book tells us it is easy to let up on a spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We're not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. But one thing I share is we can't do this perfectly, but it takes effort on my part. Because sometimes we might want to rest and relax, and sometimes our guard may let down. But always remember we have a power now that's greater than us. It'll help us through this thing. Now, one important point here, at the last paragraph on 181, where he says, if you think you are an atheist or an agnostic, a skeptic, or have any other form of intellectual pride which keeps you from accepting what's in this book, I am sorry for you. If you still think you're strong enough to beat the game alone, that is your affair. You know, I mentioned earlier, I thought I had all the power to beat this thing on my own. Because I used to tell myself in my brain, well, Kim, you started this drinking, right? You can stop yourself when you get ready. No matter how hard I tried, I could not do it. So I think that's why I drank for 42 years, trying to do it on my own until the solution in this book was presented to me, and it commenced to solve the problem. It gave me a personality change that was sufficient enough for me to recover from alcoholism. And I'm grateful for it. So, lack of power, that's all of our dilemma. We're going to always have lack of power. If I start depending on myself to keep myself sober today, I'll be somewhere getting another 24-hour chip. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go backwards no more. We claim spiritual progress instead of spiritual perfection. So I can't set my goals up too high today. We have a daily reprieve, one day at a time. I go 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes to an hour at a time. Have to constantly stay aware. See, I wasn't very aware of my drinking career. I was totally unconscious, being in oblivion most of the time in all the years, and realized what I was doing. I couldn't distinguish the true from the false, or none of that stuff. I fail utterly every time. So when he mentions the atheist or agnostic, right? Let me share this with you. AA is not a religious organization. Alcoholics Anonymous has only one requirement for membership, and it's the desire to stop drinking. There is room in AA for people of all shades of belief and non-belief. Personal experience. I believed in God when I was young because I grew up in the church. Well, I had to go. I didn't have no choice. Until I turned 16 and I left home because between 14 and 16, something changed. I took that drink at 14. 16, I thought I was a grown man. The alcohol gave me the strength I needed to conquer the world. So I was ready to go out there and search the world, see what the world was about. But years later, the alcoholism took over. But anyway, when I turned 16, I felt, my parents can't make me go to church no more. I'm going to be my own church. I'm going to be my own God and all this crazy mess. Oh, you know how we is. We think crazy. The alcohol, when we get that in our system, we get to thinking more thoughts and more thoughts. We come up with more ideas of how we're going to do this and how we're going to do that. But you know what? The truth is, that stuff beat me down for all those years till it finally beat some sense into my darn brain that I can't do this. Suffered near-death experiences, all that. Well, we all know how the story goes. We do all kind of crazy, insane stuff every time. But it mentions all shades of belief and non-belief. Well, anyway, I had to stop believing in God because the alcohol that took over, and it quickly became my God. That was my go-to. That was the solution for every problem I faced in life. So I got married when I was 17, y'all. I'm still in high school when I got married. So if I look back on my drinking career, and I talked to my wife about this today, I was a darn alcoholic then, all them years ago, and didn't even know it. I just thought I was a heavy drinker. I could walk around bragging, well, I can outdrink you and this and that. That's, the delusion. It was a darn delusion until a lot of consequences came in, right? And every time I got a consequence, I get through that and take another drink and have more consequences. So I was bounded by consequences, but consequences didn't make me alcoholic. I hear some people used to tell me in the meetings all them almost 30 years in the fellowship. Uh, I was an alcoholic before I took a drink. So I'm sitting there trying to think, well, how can this fool be an alcoholic if he ain't drinking? You know what I'm saying? It takes an alcoholic to take a drink before they can become an alcoholic because we develop an allergy from drinking alcohol. We can't develop this allergy if we never took a drink. So, and we don't develop the problem that centers in the mind if we don't drink, So, and that kept me screwed up for years. So I go to meetings for 6 or 8 months, maybe a year, and I'm still drinking in between meetings. I didn't have no solution. I was still being my own solution. And I always fix my own solution with alcohol. Whenever I got depressed, whenever I got angry, when the sun was good or the weather was good, when the weather was bad, I simply took a drink to celebrate it. It didn't matter. It was a tornado could have been coming. I was going to sit there and open the door and try to look at it and take a drink. And my mind was so twisted. I said, that tornado can't hurt me. That's how twisted my mind was when it come to alcohol. It had my mind living in a delusion completely. So back to AA. Many members believe in some sort of God, right? And we have members who have come from and they practice all sorts of religions. I just mentioned religion, right? I grew up in a religion. And when I got older, I stopped doing religion. I started doing myself. And then as the years progressed with my alcoholism, I became in a religious organization. I said, well, maybe God can help me now. After I went through so much heck and like to kill myself 100,000 times. So I joined a religious organization, right? Thinking that was going to fix my alcohol problem. So I was preaching, door to door preaching from the pulpit. But every day when I get through preaching, I'm still drinking and living an immoral life. Well, God, is you going to help me? I'm in a religion now. Can you help me? But as I mentioned, AA is not a religious organization. But I'm going to talk more about that in just a few moments. So, but that religion, I thought being in a religious organization would fix me. No, it didn't fix me. So years of struggling with that. I preached for, I think, for 11 years. And nothing had changed in them 11 years. It's just the progression of my alcoholism changed. That's what changed. I become to drink more and more and became more disassociated from the world and engulfed in myself. That was my biggest problem, obsession with myself. That's the problem with most of us alcoholics, though. It's self, 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 self. But that self couldn't fix my alcohol problem either. So, but anyway, at the end of this religion, I finally left that organization that I was in. But what really happened when I got introduced to the 12 steps, uh, even though my religion couldn't solve my alcohol problem, but you know what? I found through this process a power that was greater than me. Meetings wasn't no power greater than me, but it can be for a lot of people. So whatever you believe in, I don't have a problem with that because it's open to all. Our beliefs is open to us all. I became a true believer through Alcoholics Anonymous, and it grounded me in a power that was greater than myself. I found this relationship with the power that's greater than ourselves. Actually, my power is the God of the universe. That's who I worship. That's who solved my problem. Human will had failed. All the resources I tried in the world had failed. Programs had failed. Jails failed. Institutions failed. Myself failed. Psychiatrists couldn't fix me. Doctors couldn't fix me. None of that could fix me. I don't care how many times I went in that treatment center, 10, 12 times. Detox centers a whole bunch of times. Landing in the emergency room more times than I can even remember or care to count. None of that solved my alcohol problem. But the 12 steps of this Alcoholics Anonymous program did. See, that's the main purpose of this book, is to enable us to find a power that is greater than ourselves, which will solve our problem. And it did. First, it took a lot of humility because I was a prideful joker. I ain't want nobody to help me. I'm a grown man. I help myself. Shoot, but you know what I helped myself to? Another darn drink, another debacle, and some more circumstances. Man, so this program is actually a miracle. So in AA, though it's not religious, but we do have a simple idea. We all have a common problem, alcohol. We have a common solution, a power that's greater than ourselves, no doubt about it. And that's what helped me. So speaking about this power, right? This power, it may rely on some of our religious beliefs, true enough, whether you be religious or not religious. Even atheists and agnostics can believe in something, right? So there's one example here. One member looks at the sea, the ocean out there, because I was enthused with the ocean the first time I flew over it going overseas. I said, man, that thing is so great and powerful and beautiful. Maybe it can solve my problem. But it didn't. So, but anyway, we can accept that that's a power greater than us because it's way much bigger than us, right? So then we have to ask ourselves, do I believe that somehow there is a power greater than myself? And it had to be something besides myself. Uh, Thinking I was the power greater than myself, man, y'all know how that went. I was all twisted and combobbled. It never worked for a fool like me. So in AA, right? That is something that I read about Bill Wilson. I studied a lot of AA material, right? So Bill Wilson wrote in 1965, he says, we have atheists and agnostics. We have people of nearly every race, culture, and religion. In AA, we are supposed to be bound together in the kinship of a common suffering. Consequently, the full individual liberty to practice any creed or principle or therapy, whatever, should be a first consideration for us all. Once again, then he goes on to say, let us therefore not pressure anyone with our individual or even our collective views. So I won't sit here and press on anybody that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. It's what you want to choose it to be, right? I mean, that's my choice. And I don't expect anybody to argue with me about their choice because I'm not going to argue with you about your choice. Whether your power greater than you is a room full of drunks, you know, the AA means, or whether you believe in that tree or that doorknob, I don't have nothing to do with that. If it keeps you sober, more power to you. But I know what in the world got me sober and keeps me sober. I just want to share that a little bit. And I'm going to share something about Bill Wilson when he said something about Christ too. So we don't put pressure on nobody. But what we do here in AA, we respect and love that person for what they believe in. And I'm not going to be shy to talk about what I believe in. That's your choice. But I appreciate what this God of the universe has did for an alcoholic of my type. Literally kill myself. So a little bit more here about the AA program and religion. It talks about the God bit. Now the God part of the 12 steps comes from Bill Wilson. The rest of it, as we understood him, this comes from Jim Burwell's contribution to AA. Jim Burwell has got a story in the big book called A Vicious Cycle. I forgot the page number, I ain't got it in front of me, but it's in our big book. But so we'll start from the very beginning. AA, soon to be co-founders, they met on May 12th, 1935, which is Mother's Day, with Bill trying to help Dr. Bob sober up at Dr. Bob's home in Akron, Ohio. So Bill worked away at that for almost a month. It would historically turn out to be one of the most significant recorded examples of one drunk helping another. Dr. Bob took his last drink on June 10th, 1935, with a beer to steady his hand for surgery. He had to perform a surgery, right? And this is generally accepted as the founding date of AA, June 10th, 1935. Here it is, 2023, That's what, almost 90 years or so, close to 90 years. So in January 1938 is when Jim Burwell, he joined the fellowship. So AA started out consisting of two groups, one in Akron and the other one in New York. The latter group had one meeting a week at Bill's home in Brooklyn, right? Which was attended by 6 or 8 men. Only 3 men in that group, including Bill, had been sober for more than a year. AA was a fledgling organization, to say the least. Now listen to this. Bill and Bob were both members of a Christian revivalist movement called the Oxford Group. Notice it's a Christian movement. The early meetings were quite religious. In both New York and Akron, there was always a Bible on hand at the AA group. And the concept of God, it was all biblical back in those days. And this was reported by Jim Burwell. So into that mix came the self-proclaimed atheist, which was Jim, right? He was an atheist. Dr. Bob was an agnostic. Bill was agnostic until he became a believer. So this guy was completely against all religion. This was Jimmy B, the one I'm talking about. So he presented a challenge to the group, right? As he later wrote in Sober for 30 Years, he started fighting all the things Bill and the others stood for, especially religion, the God bit. But he mentioned that he did want to stay sober and he did love the fellowship. So it was an understanding fellowship. So at one meeting, they had a prayer. They had a prayer meeting to decide what to do with him. So they wanted to get rid of him. They wanted him to leave town or go somewhere and get drunk and quit being anti-religious against them. So he was a part of the big battle which took place in 1939 over Alcoholics Anonymous. As you know, the book, the big blue book that we studied, the 1939 edition. This book right here. So thanks to Jim, there was 2 key changes made. First, the word God was changed to God as we understood him in 2 of the 12 steps, no doubt about it. Second, and most importantly, the word suggested was added to the phrase. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. So, you know, a little bit of different and daffodil about the early part of AA. But you know, this is open, like I said, to everybody. You can be a believer, atheist, or agnostic. So let me share this with you. When I stopped believing in that God that was up above, I turned agnostic myself. I knew God existed, right? But you know, I just didn't think he'd do nothing for me. I knew he was up there somewhere, but a lot of times I thought I could hide from him. I didn't think he could see all this crap I was doing. But you know, that's what the alcohol did to me, warped my mind until I was a self-proclaimed God, and it didn't do me no good. But atheist, and even myself, every time, and I would go end up at that liquor store with that bottle in my hand. On the way there, I was believing when I get this bottle and I pour it down my throat, I believe it was gonna give me that electric effect that I was looking for. And it did. So I had faith when I walked in that door, walking like this. Oh, that's the bottle I want right there. Give me a half a gallon. Shoot, when I got to drinking that bottle, it took me where I wanted to be. So my faith became a reality. I believed that bottle would get me drunk, and it happened. But AA is quite different. I had to learn to believe in a power that's greater than myself, and it commenced to solve my problem. Here, Dan, on page 10. In the big page 10, back in Bill's story. Now, page 11. Go to the top of page 11.
Yeah, cool.
And we read the first paragraph.
To Christ, I conceded the certainty of a great man, not too closely followed by those who claimed him. His moral teaching, most excellent. For myself, I had adopted those parts which seemed convenient and not too difficult. The rest I disregarded.
Okay, thank you, brother. To Christ, I conceded. Was certainly a great man. I used to think Christ was just a man, right? But his teaching was excellent. But I had to adopt the parts which was good for me The rest took and throw it apart and said, that don't apply to me, you know. So in this case, Bill, like you say, he said, for myself, I adopted those parts which seemed convenient and not too difficult. Easier, softer way, right? We want to take things the easiest way out. But he said the rest he disregarded. Here, Bill is still being agnostic. He never truly believed. He believed in Christ, right? But he never truly believed because he didn't think Christ could do nothing for him, right? But remember, later on in the book, we're going to read God has done for us what we could not do for ourselves. I mean, even Bill talks about it here in the book. So, you know, that's something serious. So, another thing, here's Bill. On the very next the paragraph where it says, but my friend, Dan, but my friend, and you can stop where it says none at all. Huh?
Yeah, cool. But my friend sat before me, and he made the point blank declaration that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. His human will had failed. Doctors had pronounced him incurable. Society was about to lock him up. Like myself, he admitted complete defeat. Then he had, in effect, been raised from the dead, suddenly taken from the scrap heap to a level of life better than the best he had ever known.
Mm-hmm. No doubt about it. Been taken from the scrap heaps of life. Oh, no doubt. So, Bill struggled. But then, when Eddie came to see him that day, right, that's when he made that point blank declaration. God had done for him what he could not do for himself. His human will had failed. You know, and it even talks about this human will early in the big book. Doctors had pronounced, you know, Roland Hazard, he was like incurable. Doctors said he ain't never seen an alcoholic of his type, you know, and in my experience, my human will failed. I tried everything humanly possible to fix my alcoholism, but it couldn't. So doctors had pronounced him incurable, just like they pronounced Evie incurable. And Bill had come to the point where he was a hopeless alcoholic. No matter what he tried, it couldn't help him. And like myself, he says he had admitted complete defeat. So both of them had admitted that they had the step one experience, complete defeat. They admitted they were powerless over alcohol, that their lives were unmanageable. Now, if we powerless over something, what are we gonna need to do if we want to live? We got to find a power greater than ourselves. In my case, that's what I had to do. Because like I said, my human will had failed, and every human means that I tried, it had failed utterly every time. And man, so then he was suddenly taken from the scrap heap to a level of life better than the best he had ever known. I remember at my very lowest point, I called myself dead. I was a dead alcoholic walking around, still trying to get sober on my own. It didn't work. I was spiritually dead. I was basically mentally dead. Only thing I could concentrate on was another drink. So I was still being clobbered by something that was beyond my age. Alcoholism was above my pay grade. I couldn't touch it, not with a 10-foot pole. And I was going to die from this stuff if something hadn't changed. It's the way I felt. I did want to die, but I was too scared because that would interfere with my drinking. If I'm dead, I can't drink. So I didn't want to die. It was in my mind, but shoot, I'm like, the alcohol more important right now. I ain't gonna kill myself. Even though I had to go to the hospital 10 or 12 times for suicidal ideation. They locked my butt up in that crazy ward for about 2 or 3 weeks. Then they let me back out, only to do the same thing all over and over again. Still not having a solution for my alcoholic problem. It never worked. So here Bill says, Bill said, it's still on page 11 here. It says at the bottom paragraph, it says that floored me. It began to look as though religious people were right after all. So he mentions religious people. the big book tells us as well to be quick to see where religious people are right. Yeah, like I said, I was one of them religious people. I always thought I was right, but then in the end, I was still living in a delusional way of life. Yep. I feel, well, I can go preach to these people, then I can get off and preach them and come home and get drunk. Uh, I didn't have a choice but to drink because I suffered from a malady of the mind. See, the problem of the alcoholic is sinners in the mind. And without a solution, there's nothing we're going to do but repeat our behavior over and over again. And unless an entire psychic change is experienced, no, we chronic alcoholics, we are doomed. I was doomed myself to an alcoholic death, or I could accept spiritual help. I don't care how spiritual I tried to act. During my drinking career, it didn't work. So then Bill goes on to relate, my ideas about miracles were drastically revised right then. Never mind the mustard pass. Here said a miracle directly across the kitchen table. So Bill sent something in Ebby that day at the table. Though Bill sitting there drinking what Ebby was talking to him about, Bill was trying to make a little sense out of it. And see, Bill knew religion because Bill was in this Oxford group. So he knew a little bit about religion. Probably knew a lot about it. A lot of the founding members of AA, they come from the Oxford group. And then the Oxford group, actually they developed what we call the four absolutes. They came up with the idea in step 4 about absolute honesty, absolute, wait, hold on 1 minute. My brain is absolute honesty, absolute unselfishness, absolute love, absolute purity. So that's where these 4 things, the 4 absolutes come from. They come from the Oxford group. Now, and then original steps, it comes from the Oxford group as well. Because in step 1, it goes on to mention they admitted hopelessness. Step 2 got honest with self. Step 3 is got honest with another. Step 4, they made amends. Step 5, they helped another without demand. And step 6, pray to God as you understand him. So this was early in the program of AA. So, and it's come from a religious group. But, we don't stand here today and we don't preach our religious beliefs or nothing on nobody. Now, when we help another person, though, we do try to get a little bit of their religious gleanings, right? So we'll know how to approach this person. So no doubt. Now, a little bit more about Jim B. He's a cool dude. And they nicknamed him Jimmy the Atheist. And I mentioned about his story, The Vicious Cycle. So he took his last drink in 1938, June 16th again. So after months of lively discussions with other AA founders on the issue of God, he was the first to conceptualize the AA group as his own higher power. So he believed in the AA group that he was participating in back then as his higher power. That's fine if that group keeps you sober and helps you sober at the beginning. Then use that group. I heard a lot of people over the years, and I've heard them say that. Well, my group is my higher power. Well, you know what? My group, the AA group, is human, right? An alcoholic like me couldn't use that conception. No human will, no human power could have relieved me of my alcoholism. So if I'm looking at a group, I'm looking at a human power. My relief had to come from that power that is greater than myself. Or else, I wouldn't be sober today. And it's a miracle. I'm sitting here with 3 years sobriety. After struggling for 42 years in and out the program, what is that? That is nothing but a doggone miracle. I love the way of life that was presented to me through this book. And it didn't come through my religion, but what it did, it brought me closer to a relationship with the God that I worship. Most important thing, that must come first. God has come first in my life. And without him, I wouldn't be able to help other people. Without him, I wouldn't even be alive. I wouldn't breathe. I wouldn't exist. And I talk about God quite a bit. Actually, God is found in the big book 281 times, I think, in in the first portion of the big book. And then it's found in 12 and 12 and all that. But this big book this is our basic text for our society. So 12 and 12 didn't solve my alcohol problem either. It took this big book. Not the Bible couldn't solve my alcohol problem because I didn't have a relationship. So, thank God that we can use whatever we want to use, but I don't mind sharing what I like to use, what I use, the power that solved my problem. So then on page 44, right, of the second paragraph, yeah, just the second paragraph.
To one, yeah.
Yeah,
Cool. Page 44, everybody. To one who feels he is an atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible, but to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he is an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. To be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face.
Thank you, brother. Once again, talking about the atheist and the agnostic. No doubt about it. To them, such an experience may seem impossible, but to continue as he is means disaster. Like myself, I faced two alternatives. I could die an alcoholic death. It would have killed me bodily. It already had me dead spiritually. Or I could have went out and killed myself, or killed some other people, or getting in my darn car, or can't see the road, drinking and driving, right? So I didn't have much of a choice. I could either face the fact when I was explaining what I was suffering from, which was suffering from alcoholism, two symptoms of alcoholism, the allergy and the malady. I could either get help for this, or I could go on and die. So it says to be doomed to an alcoholic death are not always easy alternatives to face. Oh, it wasn't easy, no doubt about it. No, it was simple, but it wasn't easy. A price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness, depending on myself, or I could turn all things in to the Father of light who presides over all. Now the Father of light, this is a scripture in the Bible, people. So it's true. When I turned my will and my life over to the care of God, as I understood him, he did it for me. Did it for me what I couldn't do for myself. And I appreciate it. I thought God had forgot about me. I kept getting in trouble. I kept hurting myself, kept hurting other people, kept cussing God. God, if you exist, show me a sign. He never showed me no sign. So I just got another drunk under my belt. And then I get pissed off at him when I get to throwing up. And when I'm head leaning over the toilet, I'm throwing up on this side and trying to pour liquor down the other side over the toilet at the same time. What is that but plain insanity? Utterly just insane. That's just the way I was. So I'm gonna go back to page 181 for a minute. When Dr. Bob talks about, but if you really and truly want to quit drinking liquor for good and all, and sincerely feel that you must have some help, says if you must have some help. Now there's quite a few must in the big book too. Now the big book is a book of suggestions, but it do talk about a lot of must. For a drunk like me, I must do these things. I had to do these things because I ain't like suggestions. I'm just gonna tell you, I was anti. Don't you suggest this to me. I got this figured out on my own. But you know what? The big book don't ask us to figure out nothing. God don't ask us to figure out nothing because he already done got everything figured out. All they gotta do is follow some simple direction. So, but then he goes on to say, we know that we have an answer for you. It never fails. The big book says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. This path they talking about is the path that's laid out in this big book. The first 100 men and women, they already did the work. We just have to follow precisely how they did it. And it's all laid out. So I ain't got to go searching here. I ain't got to go searching there. It's all right here in one book. Then it says if you go about it with one half of the zeal and you have been in the habit of showing when you were getting another drink, your Heavenly Father will never let you down. I put all my energy, all my effort into my drinking. So quite different today, I can put my energy and efforts in helping others. Uh, the second greatest commandment, this is in the big book too. Love your neighbor as yourself. Your neighbor is anybody in the world. They don't have to be your literal next door neighbor. It means everywhere you go, the people you meet, the people you interact with, that's your neighbors. It's every other human being. And this has helped so much, in my recovery process. This is a must. This is something I must do on a daily basis. Because if I depend on self ain't gonna get too far with me. It's just gonna kill me. Myself is what got me where I'm at today. Used to hear people say my best thinking got me here. Yep, my best thinking did, because I thought I could outthink my alcoholism. Oh no, that didn't work at all. You can't outthink this kind of stuff, man. Ain't no way. So just a couple of references about God in this big book. One is down on page 87, I believe it is. Or is it 85? I'll tell you in just a minute. Let me get my head book together now. 85. Okay, yeah. Oh yeah. Down on page 85, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the bottom paragraph on page 85. I'd like you to read that little short paragraph where it says much has already been said, and then more action. Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Page 85, everybody.
Yeah.
Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of his spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further, and that means more action.
Oh yeah, thank you, brother. Thank you much. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from him who has all knowledge and power. Now look in how it works, right? It said, remember we deal with alcoholism, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much. But there is one who has all power. May you find him now. I hope everyone finds him. I never want nobody to suffer from this afflicting disease or illness that I suffered from for 42 darn years. I pray anybody struggling or whatever, anybody struggling, we have a solution today for this thing. So if we have carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of his spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. To some extent, this happened to me during the process. A state of my mind simply changed from dwelling on alcohol until a state of being God conscious. I didn't have this God consciousness when I was running, going around preaching. My conscience was still relying on alcohol. But thanks to this program, we became God conscious. And as the book says, every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. That's how it was with me. One point we got to start building from somewhere though. From somewhere. So here in the big book, I'm gonna share about one in the stone. And it's on page 12 of our big book. We go to page 12. And then it'll be where Bill says it was only a matter. And then we'll start where it says, of course I would.
Bear with. Page 12. What did you say again? Sorry, Campbell.
Where it's in italics right there. It was only a matter.
Yeah, my friend.
Yeah.
It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required of me to make my beginning.
Okay, that's great. It was only a matter of being willing to believe. remember, there's a couple of things. We got to be honest, we got to be open-minded, and we have to develop some kind of willingness. In my career, this is what it took for me, to be willing to believe, because I had to get that belief out of my head. See, during this process, we had to be able to change our beliefs and make an adjustment. So when I was constantly believing that this alcohol was going to get me drunk, I had to become willing to believe that a power greater than myself could help my alcoholism. And then Bill goes on to relate here. He said, I saw that growth could start from that point. Upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would. Yeah. So this is the foundation cornerstone. We had to set it when we build in a house, right? Or any kind of structure, we need a solid foundation. If the foundation is twisted, the house ain't gonna stand, but it's got to be solid. Got to be on a flat, level surface. It's got to be strong. We can't put like a quarter inch of cement on the foundation when it requires like 4 to 6 inches, or the foundation gonna crack. See, this book brings us into a complete foundation. Once we get that foundation laid down and get it built, then we can continue to build on this. And see, Bill mentions, he said he might build what he saw in his friend. But here's where the structure, this structure that Bill talks about building, because he completes this whole structure throughout the process. Myself, I had to have this structure, but my foundation was always cracked up. I never could lay no solid foundation. When I was laying a foundation on myself, boom, another 24-hour chip. That's just the way it was. Self-reliance failed me every time. And it would fail me now. See, self will pop up sometime today. Well, Kim, you can do it your way. No, this ain't Burger King, Kim. You can't do it your way, because your way is what got you here all this time. Your way is what got you almost dead for all these years. So I had to simply rely on God. Now, today I told you I believe in God. God is the one that solved this problem of mine. But I'm still a human being, right? I still have a human condition. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't suffer from alcoholism today. I truly don't. The problem has been removed, people. And it's another dispute. I'll talk about that another week, but no. But you know what? If my stupid butt would ever say, well, I can have one, that means the malady done creeped in on me, it's done tricked my butt, and alcoholism will be back on me again, so we're not cured of this thing. But one drink is all it takes to set an allergy off in my body. And a fool like me, I know if I ever set an allergy off in my body again, I probably wouldn't make it, because I was about dead. The 3.5 years ago, I was dead. The last trip to that psych ward, the emergency room the last time, July 19th, 2019, that was the last trip finally to the emergency room. Just 30-something years going back and forth to emergency rooms and detox ward. This last trip was the last one, and it killed me. If the ambulance and the police hadn't come to my sister's house that night, I probably wouldn't have made it through the night. Blood pressure shot up so high, it took them a week to get it down. I was insane, totally out of my mind, ready to kill my brother, ready to kill the police, ready to kill the ambulance driver, ready to kill everybody who had commenced to get involved. I didn't want nobody fooling with me. You interrupted my drinking, man. But thank God for AA, man. It changed my whole way of living. Like the book said, it's a design for living, and it really works, man. It works, it really does. So here on page 17, I want to share this part. At the bottom of page 17, Dan, that last paragraph. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, right. Unmute would help.
Okay.
The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly harmonious action. This is the great fact, great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism.
Thank you, my brother.
Thank you.
Oh, we about out of time. I'm gonna have to sit down. I'm gonna share this, then we'll get ready to shut it down. Okay. But anyway, the tremendous fact for every one of us, right? They have discovered a common solution for us. As I mentioned earlier, right? We all have a common problem. An alcoholic, we suffer two symptoms. We suffer from this allergy and we suffer from a malady. And that's a problem. I had a step one problem for them 42 years because every time I told myself I wasn't gonna drink, boom, I would drink. That seems like a step one problem. I was powerless over this stuff. But then it goes on to say we have a way out on which we can absolutely agree. A way out. You know what? The 12 steps of AA, which found a power which I was able to develop a relationship with a power that is greater than ourselves. I was able to tap into this power and commence to solve my alcoholic problem. So this is the great news that this book carries from those who suffer from alcoholism. Then it goes on to mention no other further authentication should be necessary. All the more books I used to read, I didn't care what kind they were, spiritual books or motivational books, life talk books, they didn't solve my problem. But today I can read different kind of books because it just helps add on to my spirituality today. So I pray everybody get it. I want to thank everybody for being here today. God bless. And this is the inauguration process. So we're going to be going through the book. I just want to touch on some of these things before we get started in the book. So next week we'll kick back and start on something from the book. I already got something in mind. But anyway, thank God and thank everybody for being here. Thank you, Brother Dan, for helping, being my assistant. And you can close it out, and then we open up for questions for about 10 minutes or whatever, or just fellowship. It don't matter.
That's cool. That's cool. Thank you. Thank you very much, Kemble, and thank you for allowing me to help. I'm just going to stop recording.